So you guys know how much I love noodles. Now, what I wanted to do was put together a bit of a guide on Chinese style noodles specifically. So my little collection here includes Beijing style noodles, Shanghai noodles, chili chicken noodles, and hoisin beef noodles.
The secret to this whole dish, it all comes down to the sauce. So a few little tips and substitutions here for those of us who can't get all the really traditional ingredients, but it's still going to be really delicious. So I'm going to start off with, first of all, with something called soybean paste. So this guy gives you like all the salty umami kind of savoriness that is really characteristic of this noodle dish. You can find Thai or Chinese soybean paste, so just look out for it in like your Asian grocery store, or just search for it online as well. It's pretty common and easy to get. The next ingredient that you should be adding here traditionally is called tian mian tiang. So this is a sweet fermented sauce, sweet fermented bean sauce actually, but I just could not for the life of me find it in my local area here in Australia. So what I did was I've substituted hoisin sauce. It's not quite the same, and hoisin sauce is a little bit sweeter, but I figured if I'm having issues, you might be having a problem finding it as well. So I think it's a really good substitution here. And I'm going to add in a couple of spoonfuls of hoisin. Now I also want some dark soy sauce here. The dark soy sauce is really going to give us that really rich mahogany kind of color. And then I want some regular soy sauce here to give us a salty kind of flavor. I also need some Chinese rice wine and some water. Now just give that a mix. So for the sauce itself, I'm going to be using pork mince a bit later on, but I also like to add mushrooms here. It's kind of like a go your own adventure when it comes to this sauce. You could add different vegetables, you could add tofu, so there's a few different options there. So to get the sauce going, I just want a really high heat here, some oil. I'm going to put my pork in, just kind of spread it out there. Spread it out a little and then resist the urge to touch it. Now while that pork is doing its thing, I'm just going to get a couple of other things ready. So I want some ginger. And some garlic. Okay, now let's come have a look at the pork, and I'll just flip it over. So the reason why you want all of that color on your meat is that that's really intensifying the meatiness. It's giving you that porky kind of, flavor, rather than just kind of simmered, bland pork flavor. Now I want to season that pork with a little bit of white pepper. Then I'm going to go in with my mushrooms. Now I really like the mushrooms here, and the reason is that I love that they kind of really soak up a lot of the saucy flavor. And I think that things like chopped tofu do the same thing. That would be really great to put in here as well. Just kind of want like a flavor soaker, if you know what I mean. That's looking pretty good. Now let's go in with the aromatics. So my ginger, just going to grate this straight in here. Now the benefit of doing this now and not at the start when we were hard searing that pork is that you won't burn your ginger or your garlic. And add some star anise. Now we can go in with the sauce. Now what happens here is we start out with a loose, soupy sauce kind of consistency. But I want to let that pork really simmer down, make friends with the sauce and all of those aromatics, and things will get nice and thick, concentrated, and yum. Now for the noodles, traditionally you would use like a lovely sort of hand-pulled wheat noodle or something like that. But just for ease and noodles that I think you guys will be able to find easily, I really think these Hokkien noodles, the fresh ones, work really well because they have that lovely thick chewiness to them, and that's really kind of like the gist of what you're going for with the noodles. Now you just need some boiling water, pop those in. Now the sauce is nearly there. I can see that it's starting to look a little thicker. That pork definitely looks really yum, but I want to just kind of thicken it up and make it a little bit more sticky and glossy. So I'm going to just do some corn flour, a little bit of water, and add that in. Now, magically, you are now going to have a very thick, glossy and concentrated sauce here. Oof, look at that. Now my noodles are done. Now scoop out some of that lovely, thick, glossy, porky kind of sauce. Now, the really great thing here is that we've got kind of crunchy, cooling bits and pieces to put on to our noodles here. So I've got some carrot, some cucumber, and there you go. That is my version of Jia Jiang Mian. And I think, it's a really great way to try out this dish if you haven't tried it before. A few little ingredients there that you might need to search out, but all in all, what we're really going for here are some porky, salty, savory noodles. Okay, this is good. I like it. So many different flavors going on. Salty, savory, just slightly sweet. But the main point is that is some good porky noodles. Bouncy, chewy noodles in like a spicy, savory sauce. There's a real art to stir frying noodles at home. Let me show you how. First of all, I want to marinate my chicken. I'm using chicken thighs because they're better. They're just juicier. The point is though that you need to slice it really thin so it absorbs the marinade quickly and stir fries really well. For the marinade, you want to add soy sauce, Shaoxing cooking wine, and some sugar. Give that a mix and just set it aside until you're cooking a little bit later on. For the stir fry sauce, we've got oyster sauce, soy sauce, dark soy sauce. Now that's going to give you a really nice color. Shaoxing cooking wine and some sesame oil. Chinese egg noodles. We're at the really crucial part of the recipe here. So your Chinese fresh egg noodles would typically look like this. They're usually found in the fridge aisle at your supermarket or at a Chinese grocer. The thing with them though is they get really sticky and clumpy really easily. So this is what you do. Cook the noodles in boiling water for just like 2 or 3 minutes until they're just tender. Do not overcook the noodles at this point. Drain them and rinse them until they're cool to the touch. Now pop them into a bowl and sprinkle with some sesame oil and really mix those noodles so that each strand is coated in the oil and it doesn't stick together. And one more trick here is to just cut the noodles a little bit with some scissors so they're easier to toss around in your wok. Don't tell your Asian mum though, because apparently that's bad luck. But anyway, just on the quiet.
Sometimes Marion crazy.
Now for the stir frying, get your wok really nice and hot. Some oil, add in your chicken. Yes, you want a lot of searing here. I want to hear sizzle, searing, I want that chicken to be bubbling away. And then toss that chicken around till it's just cooked. Now add in all the really fun bits. You've got ginger, garlic, dried chilies, Szechuan peppercorns. I'm leaving them whole because I like that kind of pop of flavor as I'm eating the noodles. Now toss everything together, get all those aromatics making friends in there. Now you can toss in your bok choy or any other kind of green vegetable that you like. Noodles go in and then drizzle that stir fry sauce like around the side of the pan. That way it's immediately starting to sizzle and bubble and get all caramelized. Mix all of that through until each strand of noodle is like beautifully glossy and amazing and tasty. Now toss through some spring onion and you are done. Look at those noodles. A little drizzle with some chili oil. And now here we are, stir-fried fresh Chinese egg noodles that actually are really good. Not sticky, not clumpy, and the flavor in this thing is incredible. I already know that because these are my favorite noodles. I'm gonna eat them for you anyway though. Slightly different flavor. You're like chomping through a Szechuan peppercorn. It's like bang, bang, like beautiful, like pepper flavor. Everything goes tingly and numbing. Then you've got like a bite of chili. You've got your chicken. The noodles are beautifully bouncy and chewy. Oh, it's really good. Savory, chewy, porky noodles and everything cooked in 15 minutes. These are my weeknight Shanghai noodles.
So I've eaten these noodles in Chinese restaurants in Hong Kong. I love them, and it's awesome because they only take like 15 minutes to make at home. Amazing. I'm going to use some pork today. I really like using what's called pork scotch fillets. These have a little bit of fat that run through them, so they stay a little bit more juicy and moist in the pan. But you could also use tenderloin, pork fillet, even pork belly is good. The main thing here is that you want to slice it really thin. So if you have a look here, this is how thin we're getting our pork slices here. Two things, when we go to marinate this pork, you're gonna have lots of surface area for that marinade and that salty, savory flavor to seep into the pork. And two, it's gonna cook really quickly in the pan, stay nice and juicy. And now the marinade, just some soy sauce, sesame oil, a little dash of sugar, and some corn flour. Now just make sure you mix that through really well. And that corn flour is going to help thicken up the sauce and give us like a kind of silky, tender coating on the outside of the pork. So now let's do the stir fry sauce. Really easy. Some oyster sauce, soy sauce, just regular light soy sauce, and some dark soy sauce. That's gonna give us some color. And then a little dash of sugar. Let's give that a mix. So now let's talk about noodles. And traditionally you would use Shanghai style wheat noodles, but these Japanese udon are a really good substitute and they're way more widely available. The important thing with these is that you need to soak them in some boiling water just quickly, just to separate them. So the thing with these udon noodles I find is that they're very prone to breaking apart. So you want to be really gentle, just use your tongs to kind of shake them, persuade them to gently come apart. And now just as soon as they become loose, you want to get them out of that hot water because of course your enemy for any kind of noodle stir fry is an overcooked noodle before you start even the cooking. Now I'm going to cook these straight away, so I'm happy to just leave them in this bowl, but if I was going to leave them for a little while, I would definitely run them under some cold water, toss them with a little bit of oil, and that way you won't get noodles that are stuck together. Now the stir frying in the wok happens really quickly, so make sure you've got all your ingredients ready to go. I've got some garlic, some shiitake mushrooms, cabbage, and a little bit of Asian greens here. I'm using choy sum. Okay, so oil into my hot pan, in goes the garlic, and then I'm gonna go straight in with that pork. Make sure you spread that pork right out. I really want as much of that heat in the wok coming into contact with each piece of pork. And that way we're stir frying and not allowing the meat to sort of sit around and stew. This is a really simple stir fry, simple flavors. So each little part of this cooking process or stir frying process is really important. Get good color on the pork first of all. Okay, now I'm going to add in my mushrooms. I'm using fresh shiitakes today, but if you've got some dried, they're great to have in the pantry because you can just soak them and then slice them up and add them. Okay, now my cabbage. I'm using wombok cabbage or napa cabbage. Okay, and now the choy sum. Now my noodles. And our stir fry sauce. Now you just want to keep tossing these noodles until we get a beautiful even color and that sauce thickens up a little. Okay, so this is looking really good. This shouldn't be a really wet kind of noodle stir fry. All of those noodles should soak up the flavor and the sauce so that you're left with a fairly dry kind of noodle dish but with loads of flavor. All that's left to do is just pile these up on a plate. And of course I've got to taste these and let you guys know what you're missing out on. Those chewy noodles, the texture, so good. Sweet, beefy noodles. This one looks really simple, but I've got a few little techniques up my sleeve that make this noodle dish even more amazing. These are my hoisin beef noodles. So I decided, how can I make my beef noodles more beefy? Well, this is the solution. Really simple, but works so well. So first we're going to start with the beef in the wok. And what I want to do here is really kind of char the beef and evaporate any of the juices. You'll see what I mean. Let's get going. I want a little bit of oil in here. Doesn't matter whether you're doing this in a wok or a pan, the technique is still the same. Now make sure this is like sizzling hot. I want to hear that beef as soon as it hits the pan. Now, one word on the beef. I do like beef with a little bit of fat, and I think it actually works better with flavor and texture. So my beef is a little fatty. You want to see the smoke, hear the sizzle. It should be really dramatic. Spread the beef out and then do your best not to touch it. I just said that and then I touched it, but just listen, don't do what I'm doing. Just listen and do what I'm saying. Let the beef sit there, and we're going to notice, and I'm starting to see it already, some of that liquid juiciness coming out, and it looks quite wet. So what I want to do is wait until that liquid evaporates, and that's when we're going to start to get the nice chariness on our beef. Trust me. Keep trying to touch it. It's really hard not to touch things. I'm going to put the spatula down. Not touch it. So when everything starts to smell kind of like a seared hamburger, take a look in the pan and you can see almost all of that liquid is gone. It's quite dry, and I can see some lovely little brown bits starting to happen there. So the magic is happening. I'm just going to restrain myself a little bit longer. Just wait for just a little more chariness. Okay, now get in there and see how we've got some color there. I mean, it won't all be uniformly brown, but those brown chari bits will add so much more flavor and beefiness to the rest of our noodle stir fry. So now I'm going to go in with some onions. And the key here is not to dump everything in here at once. So I want to give my onions some time. Now, onions are just a little soft, starting to char a little bit, so I'm going to add some garlic. So we're kind of doing things a little bit backward, because I would usually add garlic and onion into the oil and then my protein. Okay, toss that garlic through, and I don't want the garlic to burn, so I'm just going to give that a couple of tosses. And now in with some naka cabbage that I've got here, also known as Chinese cabbage or wombok, depending on where you are. I know, in Australia we have weird names for things. Wombok is such a weird name, but wombok is what we call it in Australia. So there's some information that you might not have known. Toss that around. Alright, so now my shredded cabbage. Well, I just added shredded cabbage. So now my shredded carrot. And at this point, you should be looking at a stir fry that is beautifully dry, so not watery. I can smell the beautiful like chari beef, and my cabbage and carrot are still a little tender, but my onion is nice and soft and sweet. So we've kind of got all these contrasting textures and flavors and everything already. And we're just going to pause there, turn the heat off. Let's do some noodle work. Now I've got some beautiful fresh Chinese egg noodles here. You could use some prepackaged ramen noodles if you've got them, or even thicker noodles like Hokkien noodles, that's fine as well. The key here is that I don't want to overcook the noodles here, because I want them to cook further in the pan and soak up all that sauce that we're going to add later. So just some boiling water, in the noodles go. And after just a few seconds, I'm going to take the pan straight off over to my wok, turn that beef back on, and get the noodles straight in. And now for all the saucy stuff. I'm going to add in some oyster sauce, some hoisin sauce, some dark sweet soy sauce. This is for a little bit of color. You could just use regular Chinese dark soy sauce as well. It doesn't have to be the sweet kind. And then my little secret ingredient here is a dash of white vinegar, just to cut through the sweetness and add a little bit of kind of lift to the whole flavor. And now toss everything together. A little bit of greenery here. I want some spring onion. Okay, now that is looking really amazing. I love that. And see, we're all concentrated in here because we got rid of all the liquid from the beef. So that sauce is really tasty, really concentrated, sticking to every strand of noodle, every little morsel of beef. Now a little bit more spring onion here, a little sprinkling of sesame seeds. Ooh, and that is one good looking plate of noodles. And of course, I'm going to try it just, to be either just cruel to you guys or just to let you know that, they are really good. You know what hits you straight away is that kind of charry, intense sweetness of the sauce. And then you get the really beefy flavor coming through. Yum.